I was remembering actually that it did go back to this long ago book, How the Way We Talk Can Change the Way We Work. And I am standing here today because really Robin's influence over the years, it's taken me a very long time, perhaps 15 years, to be able to see, oh, this can be applied to these very big and complex ideas. And it's been with Robin's help and actually the support of many of my students across the river. I teach at the Graduate School of Education, and what I want to share with you today comes out of my efforts with a lot of support to apply what has been an idea I've been walking around with for many years and feeling very comfortable with, but taking the big leap into something I'm aware makes me feel uncomfortable. And I think that has been a part of what's kept me from doing this. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for me to be basically testing an assumption I have, which when we get further into this, you'll see that is the nature of the work that I do. It's trying to help us all name what are the assumptions that are essentially driving us and holding us back, keeping us as being smaller people than we can be. So I want to start by saying I am a developmental psychologist, and it's very much what underpins all the work that I do. But I want to focus in on a particular way that I end up thinking on a daily basis as I work with people who basically come to me because they are recognizing there is a big gap between the things they say they want to do and what they're actually doing. And my work is very much about helping them to see that gap and to respond to it in a friendly and open way. And this is not easy. I mean, I was picking up in the morning's conversation that there are times we're very aware of other people who are acting inconsistently. People say one thing and then they do something, right? And we make attributions about other people. And I think the fastest place we go to is they don't really mean what they're saying. And what I'd like to introduce is, that may be true in some cases, but I'd like for you to consider that actually they may very much mean what they are saying, and there is something holding them back from being able to act in the ways they would like to. So that leads me to say that when I ask people to be naming what are the things they really want to be doing differently, they care deeply about these things. They're things that they have thought about. They're not top of the head kind of, okay, wouldn't that be cool if I could do this? No, they really are things that they've come to because they can see, I need to be better at whatever. I need to be a bolder communicator. I need to listen better. I need to be better in courageous conversations. I mean, things that if people could actually move the needle on would lead them to be so much more effective and lead them to be with people in ways that could actually make big changes happen. Okay, so when I work with them to see the gap, inevitably, for many people, the first response is not really very useful, which is to go to a place of self-judgment. You know, I'm a bad person, or I just don't have what it takes, or I really must not mean what I'm saying here because why can't I do this? I just don't have enough oomph here. Whatever it is, usually these are self-recriminating responses, and that doesn't really lead to much productive, right? It's a very old cycle. So what I think is very important early on is to help people regard the gap in a way that is friendly. And I think that Walt Whitman is a very easy way into helping people see this. And I'm going to use my little cheat sheet here because I don't want to get it wrong. He says in one of his poems, do I contradict myself? Very well then. I contradict myself. I am vast. I contain multitudes. Right? I mean, this is welcome to the big canoe. We are complex. We have lots of different things that matter to us. And so if we can imagine ourselves being welcoming of the diversity that is within us. And here I'm going to part from Walt Whitman because I think it isn't that we should just embrace all of it. Some of it we actually do need to get more aligned. But if we can open ourselves to seeing in a more friendly way that we have this discrepancy, we're then in a position where we can start inquiring and be curious, what's behind the behavior? What is actually driving the behavior? And when we do that, we're often very surprised to see, oh, there is a whole other world going on inside of us that is generating these behaviors. And the basic premise of what I'm going to walk you through in just a moment is, if we don't see those unconscious drivers, we're not ever going to really be able to conquer them, because they will be driving us, whether we see them or we don't. There they are, they're in charge. So the activity that I invite people into, which you'll see here, is really about how can I see what's going on inside of me so that I can take better responsibility. And that has been a bit of a theme this morning also. I've heard the use of the word stepping up and taking responsibility for ourselves. But you have to know what you're taking responsibility for, right? And it's very easy, from my perspective, to keep it at this level. Yes, it's important, but it's too simplistic to think it is just about taking responsibility for our behaviors. We need to take responsibility for how we're generating those. So the exercise, just for shorthand, we call it the immunity to change mapping process. And what I want to do is take you through the simple steps, which allow you with each step to dive much deeper into what's actually going inside of you. And I want to use an example that came from one of my students, who I am very indebted to for helping me to take this leap. He is a student who is in our doctoral program, and he's a black man. He basically, he's part of a cohort model. And there are, it's a small enough group, there's about 25 people in the cohort, where, you know, you see one another every single day for the first year that you're in this program. I don't know if you can imagine what that is like. Just take what your experience is with your family, who you've agreed you're going to love, right? And imagine what it's like every day you're with these people. Lots of stuff comes up, and lots of stuff, to Bill's comments before, don't get processed. Well, one of the big issues that has not gotten processed productively is around race, and is around race and equity. And race and equity is a very, very big topic in the School of Education, as it ought to be, because we know there are huge divides across our whole country in terms of who gets served well. Well, this particular student found himself in a place where, well, first I should say he was the only, he was one of 2 black men in the program at the time in his cohort. And he found himself in a place where there was just a lot of electricity coming to him. And he was feeling very burdened by this. And he did the thing that our earlier speaker said, which is he asked himself, what's the thing I'm doing that is actually creating this mess for myself? And so I'll just stop with that introduction of him right now and say that the first step that he took was to answer this question. This is the generic question, and I had it with this improvement goal header because it's basically trying to help somebody identify what's the thing that if you got better at is going to lead you to be basically your bigger, better self, right? So this is the question, and what he said is that I want to get better at being more open to understanding the perspectives of others who say things that I perceive to be racist. And here he was talking about members of his cohort. You have a copy of this in front of you in case you can't follow all this. Okay, so that's the first question. That's the thing he really wants to get better at. And you always want to spend some time like, why is this important and how important it is? And for him, this was a very, very important goal. He had gotten to a place in his own leadership where he was starting to feel like, I came to this program because I want to really be able to be somebody, a leader who serves our children. And I'm starting to feel really burnt out. I'm starting to feel very burdened by having to carry on the conversation the way that I am. And to a point that was made earlier, like I keep being the person who has to teach white people that they're being racist. And he was just exhausted. So it was a very, very important goal to him. So the next question basically assumes you are doing things that are working against that goal, because otherwise you wouldn't have that as a goal right now. So that's the question, which is what are you currently doing and not doing that gets in the way of your column 1 commitment? So his response, very honest, he said, I listened to the other person with the intent to formulate a response to his or her statements instead of listening for understanding. Secondly, I ask loaded questions to prove my point instead of questioning for the purpose of deepening my understanding. And last, he says, I tune out any response to my questions that I don't think gets us where the conversation should be. I mean, pretty amazingly honest stuff right there. Would you agree? And this already is not, I think, in our typical discourse, which is, okay, stepping up and taking responsibility for what are the things I do that are problematic in the conversation. This is about the point in doing this exercise, where it is very tempting to take what I think is the simplistic perspective, which is, I see the things I'm doing that are getting in my way, and I just need to basically shape up. Right? Change what is in my column 2. I see exactly what I'm doing, and I say that, okay, what we have here is the just do it model of change, right? I should just be able to do it. I just need to summon up more energy, more courage, and just do it. Does this sound familiar? Yeah. And if we could have just done it, we would have just done it, right? So the problem with the just do it model, which I want to say sometimes really does work, and when it does work, you know, it's terrific because it's a lot less work. But the problem with it is it does not honor that those behaviors that this person just named in column 2 are not coming out of just anywhere. They're actually serving a very important purpose. It's just that he doesn't know what the purpose is. So that leads us to the next column in the, oh, well, let me just say this. So why slides can be good. It reminds you there was a point you wanted to make, which is that this is a distinction I find very valuable, which has been made by Ron Heifetz, this distinction between adaptive challenges and technical challenges. And what we know is, so his comment is the single biggest failure of leadership is to treat adaptive challenges like technical problems. So like a technical fix is going to be something like, oh, let's do a program here where we've got additional childcare available or something like that. But you don't actually get to the bottom of, well, what actually is the problem that needs to be solved here, which is definitely going to be much more at that abstracting culture level where no amount of programs is actually going to fix how people are treating one another. So, oh, you have to, it's a good example is when you're in a high school where you've got these programs for kids who need additional help, okay? So they need additional help, but then the people regard those people who need extra help as like, well, there's something wrong with you. So the technical fix is not going to actually get at the fact that we have feelings about and make attributions about people who need to take care of these services. So when he says the single biggest failures of leadership is to treat adaptive challenges like technical, it is like saying when we go to our column 2, as I've just said, and we enter into the just do it model, what we're basically trying to do is do a technical fix to something that is not going to actually be fixed in that way because there's something bigger and deeper underneath it. And that gets us to this idea of the frame. What is the frame of the problem we are trying to solve? If we think the behavior is the problem to be solved, that's all we're going to look for. But if we can understand that the frame is about these unconscious motives, then we can look more deeply. So we need a tool for how to do that, and that's what we do here, which is we ask people to imagine doing the opposite of what they have just named in column 2. And when they're asked to be thinking about, well, okay, what's the worry or fear that comes up as you imagine doing the opposite? All kinds of things start to reveal. What happens for this person? He says, I worry that I'm going to lose the opportunity to confront racism. And secondly, I'll aid and abet racist ideologies. I was with him when he was doing this map. We were doing it in a one-on-one way. And I have to say, I was just like, I was so moved by, first of all, here I am, this white person he's saying this to, that he could say this, and that he was getting to something that I could see from his face was like, oh my God, I had no idea. That's really what this is about for me. So if these are the worries, we want to take the next step of saying, you don't just have these worries, there's actually a part of you that is committed to making sure these things you're worried about never happens. And so it makes use of these worries and says, okay, you actually have a goal that is behind this. And the goal for him is to never lose an opportunity to confront racism and to never aid and abet racist ideologies. So we put them in this goal form because actually that is his complexity. He has these goals inside of him, which is to make sure he never does lose an opportunity to confront racism and never aid and abet racist ideologies. And at the exact same time, he has a goal, which is about being more understanding of these perspectives of things that people say that he thinks are racist. Both of those things are going on simultaneously. And we call this the immune system when you look at these three columns collectively, because the idea of an immune system, well, we're trying to invoke what we know about our biological immune system, which has the purpose of what? Keeping us healthy. Protecting ourselves so that we can be healthy, right? So it is a self-protection mechanism. And what's true about our biological immune system, we would like to encourage people to think could be true psychologically as well, which is that it is there to protect you, your immune system. It is an incredibly brilliant part of our bodies and how they work, but it can be wrong, right? So I have a twin brother who is, when he was 50, had a terrible heart attack, so severe he had to have a heart transplant, and he's fine now. But when he had this new heart put in, what did his body begin to do? Reject it. Okay, that is the perfect example of the immune system is doing its job. It's just wrong, right? The very thing he needs to live, the body is saying no. So it could be, and this is the invitation, it could be that for this particular person, or for any of us around an immunity, that what is going on in that third column is there to protect us. He wants to protect his image, his self-identity as a race warrior, but it could be that that is actually getting in his way. And he can see from his column 1, it is getting in his way. And if you remember my describing why this goal was so important for him, it's deeply getting in his way, because if he doesn't address this in some shape or form, he's going to leave the field. He's so overwhelmed. So, okay, this is terrific. Let's be explicit then about what's going on underneath there, not to shame, not to do anything like that, but to just reveal what actually is there. So this is the main part of the exercise, which is seeing the immune system. And it itself is revealing, but the point of the exercise isn't just that we see these unconscious motivations, that we should also be able to have a lever for how can we begin to be less captive of them. And here we move to the fourth column here, which is big assumptions. And the question that we ask people here is, what assumptions must you be making that make your column 3, what's in the hidden goal part, make perfectly good sense? Or another way you can ask this is to complete an if-then. So if the opposite of whatever you have in column 3, what's the big bad thing that's going to happen? So what does this person say? He says, if I seek to understand by asking questions, I will lose the opportunity to confront racism. And if I don't confront racist statements, I am aiding and abetting racist ideologies. If I don't address racist remarks, I'm condoning them. Seeking to understand may cloud my ability to see racism clearly. And if I succeed in developing empathy for racist individuals, I will lose my identity as a racially conscious individual. And last, I assume the person understands what they're saying is wrong. So we have a list of assumptions, beliefs that are guiding this person in a way, as any person's assumptions do by the logic of this model, that keeps him beholden to what he's got in that third column of never wanting to lose an opportunity to confront racism and so on. So the point of the naming the big assumptions is to say, okay, these are the lenses I am using to look out into the world, and if I, through my lens, believe that if I seek to understand asking questions, I'm going to lose the opportunity to confront racism. If I really believe that's true, well, then of course, I have to ask the sort of questions that are in his column 2. He has to load things up. He has to use this as an opportunity to be confronting racism. So I want to pause here. That means 2? Okay, to say that, again, this is not the end of the whole exercise, but it is in terms of revealing what is going on inside of the self. And this is a very important first phase of the work. There is a next phase, which is really taking any one of these big assumptions that you can see as the thing that's keeping you smaller, and ask yourself whether you're willing to create a condition where you could actually test your big assumption. Can you find out whether your assumption that if you don't confront racist statements, you are aiding and abetting racist ideologies? Can you find a way to test that? So what this person did was, in fact, find ways to test various of these big assumptions. And he is now working in a very large urban school district. And he is doing the work of working mainly, it turns out, with white principals, because those are the people who have come forward to want to do this work with him. And what he has done, and we don't have time for me to walk you through this, but I think it's just really, really interesting, and you do have a copy of it, to see that he has allowed a context for people who really want to make a difference for the kids in their school to be openly examining what is going on for them that is making it so hard. So this is a white principal who has a goal of talking honestly about her own racial bias in a mixed race setting. And lots of things unfolded from once this map was produced. But the key thing is that you have to actually create the conditions for people to see up front, and it be safe enough for them to take a look at something that is really often forbidden territory, and allow people the permission to be human in all of their messiness and their complexity in order for us to really make progress on these very big, hairy goals that we have. So that is my encouragement to all of us, is to kind of step into the place that does feel nervous-making in ways that we can feel like are more safe, in order to create more of the likelihood we're going to be able to have the real conversations that need to be had. Thank you.